Sometimes I catch myself drifting, staring into the blur of empty space, and see that life is nothing more than a web of normalized systems. Some so simple I question how its obviousness eludes us. Others so tangled and complex that my mind feels like it's gonna implode. Yet, collectively, they stitch the fabric of what I call a normal life. But why this fabric? Why these patterns? Why do I sleep and wake with the rise and fall of the sun? Why does my morning not begin until caffeine courses through my veins? Why do I greet, obey, earn, spend, consume, rest, repeat as if that routine is sacred? Where did these habits come from? And who decided that that is what a good, ordinary life should look like? And what happens when billions of us marching to the same rhythm stop noticing the beat? Surely to live by such patterns without reason, to act without thinking, cannot lead to anywhere good. So today I'm curious, just how concerning is normalization? I hope you enjoy the episode. This is a diamond, clear as frozen light, once thought unobtainable, hidden, impossible, now cradled in gold, as if gold itself was made for no other privilege. It fits the occasion perfectly, for today is a day to be remembered. This ring will pass from the hands of a man to the woman he loves, a single gesture to carry the weight of everything she is to him and everything they are about to become. She is his diamond. He is her cradle of gold. It's the language of love spoken without sound, a symbol of devotion, of worth beyond measure. To the right man, a woman is worth the weight of a diamond. How could he ask for her hand without it? What would her heart speak? What would the world whisper? It's the inevitable gesture, the tradition so ingrained it no longer needs explaining. It is the normal thing to do. Because like the woman he chooses, the diamond is rare. He sees the beauty, the glisten that can only be seen from his angle. What he wishes to build with her feels just as pure, just as enduring, just as unbreakable. Because after all, diamonds are forever. For all the beauty and the emotion wrapped around this diamond, there is another story carved into its edges, one that glitters less brightly. Only a few months ago, it sat in the glass case of a jeweler, shimmering under soft spotlights, resting on a bed of velvet. Not long before that, it was in the hold of a plane carried from the Republic of Congo. And before that, it lay in the palm of a boy no older than 12. A boy whose world shattered the day armed militia stormed his village. His parents held him as if they could fuse their bodies into a single shield to protect him from the fate that awaits. He looked to them for security, and they tried to provide. And they were butchered before his eyes for their efforts, their lives traded for leverage. He was taken, not to school, not to an orphanage, but to the mouth of an open pit, the earth yawning before him, hot and humid with breath from the depths of his guts sharp enough to burn skin. There, with arms barely strong enough to hold his own weight, he was forced to dig. Forced to carve open the same planet that had once sheltered him, searching for the stones that had stolen his family. His hopes, dreams, his very future stripped away and sold for the comfort and profit of faces he will never see, strangers he will never meet. And his story is only one of many, all over what is, at its essence, a rock. Born under the weight of the world, forged in darkness so complete that even light dare not enter. The earth melts, then cools, carbon atoms lock in a perfect embrace, a lattice so strong it defies time. This dance of heat and pressure continues for over 1 billion years before it is delivered, by tectonic chance, into human hands. But somewhere along the way, this unyielding creation took on another kind of weight. It became currency. It became status. It became the price tag for love. So how does a rock originating from such human tragedy transform into a pure, glittering symbol of devotion? How have we become so desensitized to its truth? How does something so dark, so harrowing become so deeply woven into the fabric of what we call normal? Before the 1950s, diamond engagement rings were far from universal. They were not the seal of love, not the expectation they are today. De Beers controlled the vast majority of the world's diamond supply, yet demand was weak. Vaults were heavy with stones the public had little appetite for. Under the leadership of the Oppenheimer family, the company turned not to the mines, but to the mind. In 1938, Harry Oppenheimer met with the advertising agency NWA to plot a radical shift, a decade-long multi-front operation to mine desire itself. The scale was enormous, advertising budgets soared, diamonds were no longer sold as rare minerals, but as eternal promises. In 1947, copywriter Francis Garrity wrote 4 words that rewrote human tradition. A diamond is forever. The line was slipped into magazines, love stories, society pages and Hollywood films. Actresses draped in jewels on the silver screen, screenwriters weaving them into scripts, glossy photographs tying them to glamour and romance. De Beers didn't just sell a stone. They sold proof of love, visible and measurable. And with little thought to how these diamonds were sourced, culture embraced it. Not as suggestion, as inevitability, as the normal thing to do. Normalization works like water seeping through stone, slow, silent, patient, until the cracks widen and the rock gives way. It infiltrates every part of our lives, not just the objects we consume, but the beliefs we carry, the habits we defend, the very air of culture we breathe. Think about it. Why do we have 3 meals a day? There is no biological or scientific necessity for eating exactly 3 meals a day. The 3 meals structure is a cultural invention, not a biological rule. I, for example, thrive on intermittent fasting and find that it makes me feel less lethargic throughout the day. Why do we carve birthdays and celebrations into cakes as if sugar and candles could measure time or success? Why do we clap our hands as if noise itself could determine appreciation? Why do we kneel, bow, salute, obey as if posture alone could prove respect or devotion? The roots of these rituals are rarely based on logic or current necessity. Sometimes it begins with stories. A diamond is forever. A soldier dies for freedom. A cigarette calms the nerves. Words repeated until they no longer sound like slogans, but like common sense. A melody hummed for so long, you forget who wrote it. Other times, it feeds on repetition. A man bites his tongue because men do not cry. A woman paints her face because women must be beautiful. We copy gestures, beliefs, opinions of those before us until mimicry becomes identity. Many times, it reeks with the stench of profit, desires, and indoctrination. Happiness bottled in sugar, status stitched into brands, patriotism draped across flags. Those who stand to gain understand that it's easier to mold our desires than to meet our needs. And so we inherit not truth, but conditioning. But some could argue that the process of normalization is, well, pretty normal. So why am I right in this? The Asch experiment. In 1951, experiments were conducted to study group conformity behaviour. 5 participants were selected to view cards with 3 individual lines. Their only task was to state which was the longest line. Yet, only one of those participants was the true subject. The rest, actors instructed to give the obvious wrong answer. At first, the subject resisted.
1. That's 2.
1.
He trusted his own perception of reality, but eventually, something odd happened. As the actors repeated the same wrong answer again and again, doubt seeped in. Confusion clouded judgment, and eventually, he conformed.
3. 3.
This instinct now carries a name, the bandwagon effect, the human instinct to follow the herd because surely so many people can't be wrong. It's not reason that guides us, but the need to belong, to be accepted, to stand inside the circle of approval. Psychologists call it a form of conformity bias, where individuals align their decisions not with personal conviction, but with the visible momentum of the majority. It's concerning because it bypasses critical thinking. When people jump on the bandwagon, critical voices are muffled, doubts are swallowed, evidence is ignored, all for the comfort of belonging. This effect can distort public opinion, steer consumer desire, even sway the course of nations. In crowded rooms, in political rallies, in the endless scroll of digital echo chambers, the bandwagon grows louder. Online, it's not truth that spreads the fastest, but whatever spreads easiest, not because it is verified, but because it is viral. Conform long enough, and confusion dissolves into routine. What once sparked hesitation becomes habit. Across generations, the questions vanish. Children born into this rhythm will inherit the behavior as if it were instinct, as if it were etched into their very blood. In this way, ideas, habits, and beliefs bind themselves to our DNA, not through biology, but through inheritance of repetition. A quiet coding of culture that passes from one life to the next until it feels eternal. Once something is crowned normal, it begins to defend itself fiercely and instinctively. And those who dare to question it are not met with dialogue or debate, but with laughter, with ridicule, with isolation. And some have even been silenced with the denial of existence itself. Nelson Mandela, 1940s, challenged the institutionalized racism of apartheid in South Africa and was imprisoned for 27 years. Today, we recognize him for being the global symbol of justice and reconciliation. Galileo Galilei, 1610 to 1632, challenged the geocentric model of the universe that egotistically put the Earth in the center and was tried by the Inquisition, forced to recant and placed under house arrest for the rest of his life. Today, we recognize him for being the father of modern science, and a heliocentric universe is unquestioned truth. Ignaz Semmelweis, 1840s, challenged the medical norm that hand-washing was unnecessary and was ostracized by the medical community, institutionalized in an asylum and died from infection. Today, We recognize him for being a champion of antiseptic procedures, and modern hygiene rituals is an undeniable reality. How many voices today are mocked, not for being wrong, but for seeing too clearly a truth that normality has hidden from the rest of us? The danger of normalization lies not only in what we accept, but in how acceptance can be engineered. Words bent, ideas twisted, sharpened into a weapon until they no longer reflect truth, but manufacture it. Until profit, power, and convenience are served, while reality dissolves into delusion, chaos, and death. Fossil fuels set the skies on fire, and still we praise them for keeping our homes warm, for carrying us to work, for granting us the illusion of progress while the planet chokes. Wars redraw the earth in blood, divide one species into animalistic tribes, each convinced it is righteous, as if hate and death could ever conceal the shed blood beneath our skin. All orchestrated and justified under the veil of terrorism, patriotism, and culture. Animals are born into steel cages, their first breath already tethered to their last, their bodies dismantled, rewrapped in packaging, sold as if suffering could ever be disguised as supper. And even when plastic piles up in rivers, overflows landfills, and seep into the bloodstream of all living things on this planet, we shrug it off as the cost of convenience. When we accept things as normal without thinking, we remove the space for logic, for reason, for morality. Normalization seeps everywhere, into how we love, how we eat, how we worship, into the silence of classrooms where children stop raising their hands out of the fear of being different, into offices where people laugh at jokes they don't find funny out of the need to belong, into nations where violence is excused as necessity, where injustice is shrugged off as order, where cruelty wears the mask of tradition. Customs, systems, habits, so tightly stitched into the fabric of our days that they vanish into the background. Until sometimes a thought slips through the cracks. A sudden stillness, a fracture in the noise. For a moment, we feel it. The unease, the dissonance, the quiet realization that something here just doesn't make sense. It's the fracture that appears when what we know collides with what we do. Leon Festinger, the psychologist who first studied it in the 1950s, described how people would twist their beliefs to protect their behavior. If endless scrolling drains our time, we tell ourselves it keeps us connected. If smoking blackens the lungs, we insist it calms the nerves. If consumerism leaves us restless, we claim it's freedom of choice. The mind cannot stand in two truths at once, so we bend one until it fits the other. We justify, we excuse, we bury the dissonance deep enough to keep moving. Normal life is nothing more than the consequence of actions and expressions repeated, manufactured, and enforced by all who came before us that we continue to uphold without question. But normal is not truth. It's not fact. It's not even right. What if the life we live, the world we defend, is wrong? Maybe one day future generations will look back on us with disbelief, calling our culture primitive, uneducated, unaware. The way we look back at the guillotine, at religious ritual sacrifice, at slavery, and they will wonder, how could it ever have been accepted as normal? So I encourage you to wonder and to trace the roots of the things you accept without thought, to pull at the threads of the ordinary. I ask you to challenge, not comply, to define, not follow, to refuse the comfort of fitting in, to resist being normal, because what lies beyond everything that is normal could be infinitely better.